Right, 25 January 2021, and I'm joined by Mr. Tinashe Jonas, President of U.S Zimbabwe. How are you, sir?
Blessed and anointed when I'm on Gambagwe Media.
Well, fantastic, and I'm very grateful that you're joining me today. So today we want to talk very, very quickly because I know you've got another engagement coming up, and we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic. This morning, the U.S. ambassador in Zimbabwe had an interview. It was published this morning with Trevor Ncube. I don't know if you saw that interview.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, fantastic. So this is where we're going to start. The U.S. ambassador, I like him very, very much for one thing. He comes out and speaks a lot. He has had a lot of interviews. I think he's one of the most engaging ambassadors. I've said this ever since all the about 14 ambassadors from the United States who have come to Zimbabwe. He's one of the ones that comes out a lot. But I want us to dig deeper and say, has he done a good job since he came to Zimbabwe? And obviously, you're going to help me with dissecting what the U.S. ambassador, Brian Nichols, has done since he came to Zimbabwe. I think that was in July 2018, soon after the coup. That's when he came, and he actually arrived almost the same time as Idi Mnangagwa. So what were your impressions about the interview that he had today with Trevor Ncube?
No, I will start with the positive. The positive is it's always a good idea when he, as you say, is vocal, and it makes it easier as Zimbabweans to understand the opinions and views and facts of US towards Zimbabwe, since we have got a cat and mouse relationship. I think that's the first positive thing. And then the second is he was promising positive that he was talking positive that if we are going to review regularly, and if we are happy with what Zimbabwe is doing, we are going to remove the sanctions. So that hope that sanctions can be removed one day is something that we want to pin our hopes on. And he was also talking about the 65 million US dollar that they've made available to the World Food Program. We welcome that, and I can say since 1980 there's been almost 3.2 billion US dollars that has been made available through the USAID, their charity organization. So 3.2 billion, that's a lot of money. Yeah, I think in terms of the charity side, they've donated recently 20 ventilators. Yeah, in terms of the charity side, I think he has done so well.
Okay, so I think let us play a snippet of that interview about the ventilators that you're talking about. And then I want to ask you my next question after that.
Taking concrete steps to resume our role in the world. And we're taking concrete steps even today. And at the time of this filming, I just want to note that two things happened today that I think will be of interest to your viewers. One is that had the honor to turn over 20 brand new ventilators to the Solidarity Trust of Zimbabwe that will be used in 4 hospitals to help Zimbabweans dealing with this horrible, horrible COVID pandemic. And my condolences go out to all Zimbabweans who've lost a loved one in this incredibly difficult time. We are committed to partnering with our friends, allies around the world, and our commitment to the people of Zimbabwe, which has been in place since independence. 1980, we were the first nation to open an embassy in this country. We've given over $3.5 billion in assistance to Zimbabwe. And now with this latest donation, we'll be providing over $20 million just in COVID-19 assistance.
Right. So you heard what he said there.
Yes.
They are donating a lot of money to Zimbabwe, 3 billion since 1980. They've had over 14 ambassadors, if I'm not mistaken, coming to Zimbabwe. They've built the biggest embassy in Zimbabwe, which means they spend a lot of money in Zimbabwe, people who constructed that embassy and people who work in that, all this building you're seeing here. Most of the people who work here are Zimbabweans. Zimbabwean businesses are benefiting from this embassy, which is there in Zimbabwe since 1980. So now I want to go specifically to him. We've already said that he did a lot of work talking. He came out very vocal. He mixed with the community. He did not lock himself up in the embassy. But we know that from history, an ambassador normally lasts like 3 years to 4 years maximum. So this is probably his last year in Zimbabwe. Has he done a good job as an ambassador to Zimbabwe from the United States?
Yeah, I think charity side, I can say he has done a fantastic job, because any form of assistance, even if someone can donate $1, to me that's a lot, because it's coming from the kindness of someone. So I think America, the statistics are, it's the biggest bilateral donor to Zimbabwe. So we need to applaud them on that front. In that front, yeah, they are donating to help our charity organizations and the Zimbabwean citizens. So that department, I think it was a fantastic job. Then the horrible side is the political side.
Okay, so before we go to the political side, let me play him first. Let's give him a chance to speak about that political side, and then we'll go to that side.
And I only asked in Zimbabwe that the events of August 2018 be investigated, and that the results of that investigation be implemented. What I recently said, again, was that the Motlanthe Commission recommendations have not been implemented. The events of January 2019, those events have not been investigated properly. No one's been brought to book as a result of the state-generated violence at that time. And I met with some of the victims of violence here from January 2019, and those people are still waiting for justice. But that's an issue of institutions and the rule of law. What I will say is that in my conversations with members of Congress and their staffs from both parties, there has been a remarkable unity of views about Zimbabwe. And they again rest on the issues of respect for democracy and its institutions, the rule of law, and human rights, as well as market-based economic policies. And I believe that one of the unique features of the relationship that we have with Zimbabwe is that there is a U.S. legal framework, a law that lays out what it is the United States would like to see happen in Zimbabwe. And that doesn't exist for most countries. And that's an opportunity both for the government of Zimbabwe and the government of the United States to sit down and say, here are a list of things that we're concerned about. If you move in the positive direction from our standpoint on these issues, our relationship will improve. We've told you in black and white what we care about, and we look forward to seeing progress on those issues and to working with you to see progress on those issues.
Okay, so that was a small snippet of the interview between Trevor Ncube and the U.S. Ambassador, Brian Nichols, where he was speaking about Zidera, obviously, what Zimbabwe needs to do for Zidera sanctions to be lifted. So what I'm going to do is I want to take a small break. I've got to fix a technical problem with my guests. Then we'll be back in a second.
Mama wanna get it, mama wanna get it nice. I know food I miss, I know food I say, I know kaya marigi. Kama kwetu tikom, kwetu tikom usasai.
Kambakwe uyo anotara mari anogaya mari garai mamunzwa pane nyaya pano zvamunoda kunzwa zvinotaurwa pano madiko kumunzwa mugovane.com. Kambakwe vanogaya mari vanotara mari vanoziya mari. Kambakwe vanotara feya kuti pamberi zvichafamba sei. Vanhu muterere zvikubatsirei mukufamba kwenyu zvikubatsirei. Mirai ndikudze kuti chokwadi pano chizere. Kambakwe vanogaya cash vanopa mafacts vanotara straight vane evidence vane confidence plus intelligence
entertainment current affairs and news. Kambakwe.com usasarire. Kambakwe anogaya mari
Right, Charles, I'm sorry we have lost Mr. Jonassi for a while with a technical issue. So I hope you're doing well. You've been watching, right? So I think we should continue until Mr. Jonassi joins us. How have you been this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm okay. How are you?
No, fantastic, man. So let's continue with this topic. The U.S. ambassador, you've heard what he said. You've heard what Mr. Jonassi said. What are your views on the U.S. ambassador and the work that he's been doing since he joined, given also what he said, the help that they've been giving? Is the U.S. ambassador doing a good job since he came to Zimbabwe?
Okay, thank you very much. Greetings to your audience and everyone who is joining. I think Mr. Jonassi has covered some ground on the social side. I'm more interested on the political side. I think when we discuss or whenever we talk about the ambassador of US in Zimbabwe, we cannot separate him from the state, like from the United States of America. That means he is a representative. So whatever he is doing in our country, it's like executing an instruction from his country. So I will here and there, I will address the United States in conjunction with him. I didn't follow him very much on personal grounds, but I followed the interviews and stuff. But I just want to have a focal point on the relationship between U.S. and Zimbabwe. I think politically, America has been involved in Zimbabwe for a very long time. So now, as there is a new administration of Joe Biden, we had Trump before and we had Obama before. What I think is there is a sticking point, because if you look, you will see that what he was saying as sticking points, he was actually explaining about the sanctions, because the sanctions is the hot topic between Zimbabwe and United States. Wherever there is United States relationship to Zimbabwe, wherever you go, the first thing that comes up is sanctions. I think the interviewer, Trevor was explaining vividly that the sanctions are affecting the majority of the people, the normal person in the street. Then he was not actually, he said he can't accept that. He said there's a document, there's IDERA, they drafted to pinpointing exactly what they are expecting, their anticipation from the government of Zimbabwe to do or to execute so that they can remove the sanctions. Okay, if you look, all these things, 2013 constitution, they say it has to be implemented. I think the 2013 constitution, the more focal point was the electoral reforms. That was the hotspot. There should be electoral reforms before an election. Okay, we passed. There is POSA, Public Order Security Act. There is IPA. There is ZIDERA. Now he was talking about 2018 August incidents. There is Motlande Commission. If you look at all those things, step by step by step, I will give an analogy of, let's say, people who understand football. The situation here is a catch-22, because if the state is to implement these recommendations from United States, that means they will settle the playing ground, the playing ground. That means all the players will be on the same level. That is not to the interest of the state. It's like two football teams are playing, and one is bought a referee. And now you go, you say, no, you should not buy a referee. The fact that the team has already bought a referee is an indication that they knew the probability of losing was so high that they have to take steps to have assurance that they will win. So now what America is doing is like, no, you should not buy the referee. Let's have a level playing ground. But if you look, I don't think all these things, if you list, I think I have pinpointed 6 things. I don't think the state is interested in implementing any of them. For example, let's take ZIDERA. There's a land issue in ZIDERA. If you look, America is saying that you should compensate the farmers, the white farmers. You should compensate them for the land, and you should compensate them for the improvements, whatever improvements done on the farms and the land itself. So even if I just took that one from ZIDERA, you will see that even the majority of the Zimbabweans will not accept that the government is to pay for the land and pay for the improvements on the land. So that one, we are not talking about the state, but we are talking even all the peoples. They will not accept that, because the Chimrenga and the Liberation War was about the land that was taken forcibly. And now they propose that the state has to pay for it, to return it back. So that I just took one from Zidera for you to understand the conflict that is already there. So this is some of the things the Americans are saying we should execute, we should do, so that the sanctions will be removed. So whenever people try to show them, to indicate to them that the effects of the sanctions are not to the people you are targeting, they will not buy that. It's not like they don't know, they know that. I think America, during the time, I think around the time MDC was formed, I have a feeling that they thought that MDC was going to be victorious in Zimbabwe. So whatever the relationship they had from 1980 with the country, with the ruling party in the government, they shifted that they shifted to MDC in anticipation that the MDC was going to win. So as the MDC was going to be the government of the day, because we all know that the all political parties, they have handlers everywhere. There are people behind who have interest somewhere, that if this party becomes the government of tomorrow, they will get advantages in business, contracts, things like that. So they shifted to MDC. They supported them financially and everything. Because if you look, you will see that as time goes on, they realize that the probability of MDC ever being the ruling party in Zimbabwe is fading away slowly each and every day. They see that the only way is to return back to ZANU-PF. So that's why you see that after 2017, they say, no, we are willing to work with the current government. We'll see this and that and that. But there were people who, if they go to the highest length, even if you remember now, I think it's last year, former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, put it all there. He said UK and United States, they were ready to intervene in Zimbabwe militarily to remove the ruling party. So you see how far they were prepared to enter into Zimbabwe. That was the direct, and I believe him. I believe Thabo Mbeki. Why? Because you see that it was not the first time these two countries would intervene militarily into a sovereign state. They did it in Saddam Hussein. Later on, people came to know that all that was not true. They sell a narrative. They controlled media during that time. They sell a narrative. People buy into the narrative. Their congresses have passed that it's okay for them to bomb Iraq. And now the whole world, we are suffering because of that. They created ISIS because of that actions. And ISIS is now in Mozambique. Okay, let's get back to our. So I think this administration of Joe Biden, it's a system. When Obama comes in, people were saying, Africa, this is our time. That the people were expecting the administration of Obama to focus more on Africa democracy. Okay, I believe there's no democracy everywhere. My belief is there is worse democracy and there is better democracy. There is no perfect democracy. Wherever every system has flaws, even democracy. So if you look, you will see that when Obama gets into power, Africa thought that it's our time. But we were proved wrong. I didn't see, except Obama visiting Africa. Yes, he did visit. We were happy in that. But he was swallowed by the system. So when somebody becomes a president, there is a system that is running behind. So people can vote somebody into power based on their characteristics, the things they can see. Remember, here in South Africa, people said they had high hopes for Cyril Ramaphosa. They say, no, he is a negotiator, he's a businessman, and whatsoever. But when he gets into power, he was swallowed by the system. So that's exactly what is going to, that's exactly what happened to Joe Biden. That is going to happen to Joe Biden. And that's exactly what happened to Barack Obama. So for me, I don't think the sanctions will be removed anytime soon. And I also don't think that the state is willing to do all these things that the United States government are asking them to do so that they will remove the sanctions. So this is a sticking point. It's like you're squaring a cycle. This thing will go on. I don't know for how long. That's my view, is because you cannot, these systems, these are 6 points, sticking points: the Constitution, electoral reforms, Post Public Order Act, Zidera, Motlande Commission, 2018. All these things are the things that sustain the state. There are things that, remember, those things were introduced strategically. They were, it was a strategical introductions of systems to sustain the system that is there. So you cannot tell the state to remove the things that are sustaining them. So I don't think that's my point. There is not going to be any development, so that the relationship will be just like this. In Corona, we might get some charity here and there for vaccines and stuff like that, but on a larger scale, there is nothing that is going to change. There is nothing that is going to change. That's my view on that, on the relationship between America and Zimbabwe, in Joe Biden, in whoever, especially now. If you look into America.
Right. I hear you, Charles. So I want to stop you.
Okay.
I want you to just give us your final word, because obviously you've said a lot about the sanctions, about the relationship between the United States and Zimbabwe. So let's go back to the ambassador.
Okay.
Do you think he has done a good job? Was he supposed to do more?
Look, I think he did a good job on the fact that he was accessible and he could explain to the people the sticking point between his country and Zimbabwe. So he could, like what he did, he could put it out there so that the people could understand. So that if somebody is selling another narrative that is different from he was like there to clarify what was the sticking point and why the elections has to be there. He did a good job on that level, that he was accessible, he could explain, but on a higher level, I don't think, remember, these ambassadors, whatever they do, they don't just wake up and start doing something. They have to be in contact with their state. After that, they will be given a green light to execute whatever they think is necessary to be executed. So whatever he was doing, at a certain level, he as a personal in the country, you could do some stuff, but on a higher scale, he could not do anything without America being involved, or in the absence of the instruction that is coming from his country. I think
the point is made. The point is made, and I think that's a great point. So let's bring back Mr. Jonassi and see. Let's take it where we were. Mr. Jonassi, you were still speaking when we got cut off. And you said you wanted to go to the political side, which is what Charles was also doing right now. So give us your views. You heard the ambassador speaking. He said the ball is in Mnangagwa's court. The requirements for sanctions to be lifted are written down. And it's clear what needs to be done from Mnangagwa's side for those sanctions to be lifted. What is your view on that?
And sovereignty is at stake. because the sanctions to me are a tool. Okay, let me take back the viewers on what the U.S. Congress said the time they were introducing the sanctions or the ZDERA. They actually said the ZDERA is going to enable a peaceful and democratic transfer of power. So the objective of ZDERA is a peaceful and democratic transfer of power to help people of Zimbabwe for a peaceful and democratic transfer of power. Meaning, in my own personal view, ZDERA is going to be lifted only if MDC is in power. If ZANU-PF is in power, seriously, I don't see any uplifting, any removal of ZDERA, because they are clearly for a transfer of power. So if there's no transfer of power and power is still in the hands of ZANU-PF, I doubt ZDERA would be removed.
Okay, so let's go back to the Mohlante Commission. Mnangagwa set up the Mohlante Commission. Why hasn't he implemented the recommendations?
Although I don't know the reasons, but I think the state, for example, the ambassador touched on the issue of August 1 and the perpetrators to be brought to book. But by not implementing the Mohlante Commission, I think the government is scoring an own goal.
Okay, so you take the point of the ambassador that there are some low-hanging fruits that
yes,
Mnangagwa's government is failing to implement. Mohlante Commission, very, very simple. Removal of the military from government and elections. That is election reform, economic reforms, media reforms, human rights abuses. Right now, we've got people that are being arrested willy-nilly. We talked about this a few weeks back. These are not difficult things to implement. What is the sticking point on the Zimbabwean side? What is stopping Mnangagwa from implementing the easy things?
Yeah, the ambassador also talked about media reforms. He said, for example, right now the government was issuing new broadcasting licenses. And he mentioned that all the people who got the licenses are organizations or individuals who are linked one way or the other to ZANU-PF. But yet freedom of speech, of expression, they must give licenses even to some people who are known to be probably not in bed with the ruling party. To me, that point is very fundamental, because surely we need different voices to be heard in Zimbabwe. People who are analyzing or criticizing the government, to me, they are very important, because those people, they are more like supporters of the government, because they are commenting and criticizing. It makes ZANU-PF, if ZANU-PF is criticized, it makes them perform. I think for media reforms, I want to think that it's not something difficult to do. There's always that sentiment in the country that people who get licenses are people who are loyal to the government, and I think the government also must rise to the occasion, because it's a duty of the government to perform, to deliver services to the citizens of Zimbabwe. So I think the government must not behave in a way that it's like cornered. It's like it's having a hidden agenda. Although I'm not supporting US in policing our democracy, when we saw that there's also loopholes in US in terms of the so-called democracy. But I just think the government is also must be seized with the delivering services to the nation without sort of being seemingly like they are compromised, because for now the setting up of the Mhlande Commission, it's now looking like it was just a side show, and yet there was huge budgets which were invested in that commission, and whether they are still busy with the findings or not, but sometimes I think the government behaves in a way that looks suspicious.
Okay, so let's say you are Brian Nichols. You send reports every week to the United States, to your head office. What would you say? Would you say the sanctions are ready to be lifted? Or given what you've just said now, does the government of Zimbabwe give him enough incentive to talk to his bosses to say things are changing in Zimbabwe?
Okay. I think sanctions were never supposed to be put in was it sanctions, they say they are enabling democracy and economic reforms, including electoral reforms, media reforms, and whatsoever. I've got a problem with that because there's no nation. Zimbabwe was a colony of UK, but now we are no longer a colony. So, I mean, we are enjoying the same sovereign rights as US. There's no country right now in the world which is giving America conditions to meet, or else we are going to punish you. So I want you to understand me very well that this issue of the sanctions to me are not, the sanctions were never, we're not supposed to be put in place from the beginning, because there's no country which has got the right to police another country. And then when we talk now of media reforms, when we talk about the Mhlande Commission, that is to me an internal issue. Us as Zimbabweans, we have got the right to demand certain services from our government. Opposition, political parties, civic society, we can engage each other. And but it's, to me, it's not correct that America must tell Zimbabwe what to do. Because if Zimbabweans does that, let's say Zidera is removed for argument's sake, America would still periodically craft other things that they are not happy with, because the ambassador was saying there are things that we are not so pleased with, and they have written in black and white. The onus is on the government of Zimbabwe. Why did the people of Zimbabwe went to war? They went to war so that they own their rights in the country. When we talk about independence, why are we celebrating independence 18 April 1980 every year? 18 April every year. Our independence celebration are that there is no country which can tell us or dictate on us. So I want people to differentiate the two. If we are to do reforms and we are to do everything, it must be an internal issue being driven by the ZANU-PF, being driven by MDC, by any other citizens, non-profit organizations. America must not tell us, because what happened in America now, there's no country which is punishing America in terms of sanctions. So this big brother mentality, to me, I'm against it.
Okay, right. Yes. I get you, Mr. Jonassi, and obviously we've had this discussion a lot.
Yes.
And I know you've got another interview on SABC very, very shortly. So let us bring this to an end. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
So Charles, I would like to give you a last chance to speak, and specifically, I want to ask you about other ambassadors. We talk a lot about the United States. What about the UK? What about China? Do these people owe us anything, or they are doing us a favor?
They are
Okay.
not doing as a. Oh, okay.
Okay, let Mr. Jonas take this one. It's okay. Let him take this one.
No, it's fine. We are wrapping up, so it's a chance.
Okay. Specifically, if you look in Zimbabwe, in relations to all other countries, the relationship between Zimbabwe and United States and UK is the one that these are the two relationships that pops up very, very quickly. So on United States, I think we have shown what we think it's going to be happening. On the UK front, I have not taken a lot of study currently about it. I was focusing mostly on the US side, but as it stands, I think the approach from the UK and the approach from the United States towards Zimbabwe, most of the times, I believe 90% they are in alignment. That means whatever United States thinks about Zimbabwe, you are not surprised that UK is also thinking the same. Like what I previously said, that they were ready to intervene in Zimbabwe. It was the two of them. So most of the times, if you look, they don't differ so much. So whatever we said about United States, it's probably majority correct also about UK.
Okay, Charles, thank you very much for joining me and Mr. Jonassi today in this discussion. I think what I will do is I need to call you on your own day so that we can have more time to talk. All right. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to leave the studio and then we'll talk again next time. Thank you very much, Charles.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good night.
Right, Mr. Jonassi, I'm going to give you a few minutes. I know you need to run. So let's go back to the question that Charles has just answered.
Yeah.
We have the UK embassy. We've got the Chinese embassy, all these other embassies, big countries. Why is it that the sanctions that are being imposed by the United States are so much of a focus to the Zimbabwe government? And yet they've got support of the Chinese, the Russians, all these other people.
Okay. I want you to understand one thing, that the history is that the Americans are British, they're the British people. So these are more like cousin, sister countries, US, UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the other countries. So the fact that when the US gives you sanctions, UK would give you sanctions, European Union will give you sanctions, because the US is like the biggest brother in the world. We know even China is under certain, we know this, their biggest cell phone has been under sanctioned, accused of spying, just because it's the Huawei cell phone company, because it was in front, it was selling more units globally, more than the US iPhone. So it's more of economic sabotage. It's more so. Zimbabwe embarrassed the whiteness by land reform. That's where it started, because the US and its allies were afraid that other countries in Africa would follow suit, because the African economic legacy is the land. So the land, number one. Number two, our intervention, our war in DRC. We know that the US is looting mineral resources in the DRC, and its enablers is Uganda and and Rwanda. People might be surprised why Rwanda has got so much economic boom when there are no resources actually to talk about in Rwanda. And people are wondering why Museveni is abusing human rights, is doing exactly, if not more than what Zimbabwe is doing. Bobby Wine now, 11 days, is under house arrest, illegal. The court today declared he must be freed from illegal detention. And the army and the police refused a high court order. And the US is quiet about it. Why? Because America is sponsoring the Museveni and the Ugandan military to also help them fight Al-Shabaab in Somalia. And so Museveni and Paul Kagame are enablers of America who are helping US to loot in DRC. So Zimbabwe fought for democracy in DRC, but because we crossed the line of US American interest of looting globally, so we provoked America by our intervention in DRC, and we were told even under Zidera to move quickly out of DRC. Number two, the land reform. It affected the British farmers, which, as I said, the British and the Americans are the same. But the British are the ones who were taking blacks in Africa to the plantations in America. And so Americans are British people. So these are the two causes of our punishment. Our punishment has got nothing to do with the democracy, because there are so many countries that Saudi Arabia, we know there's no democracy in Saudi Arabia. There's no democracy. Israel, we know how Israel is abusing the Palestinian people. We know there's no. So the democracy issue, it's they're hiding behind the finger. But US and the UK, these sister companies, they are still not. They are in denial that Zimbabwe is no longer a colony. So so Zimbabwean Harare administration might not be motivated to implement these things out of showing US and the UK that we are not yet, we are not still a colony. Zimbabwe doesn't have any right to policy the democracy in US, and besides, the US will never listen if Zimbabwe can write conditions to be met in America. So to me, this is about independence. This is about sovereignty. If obviously the government is not a saint, it's not an angel, but this must be internal matters. Us as Zimbabweans, we must have the pride to sit down and iron our differences and problems. We should not implement anything to make US and UK happy. If we do that, it's the same as treating your wife under the conditions of your neighbor. You don't need to run your family or to under the conditions of the neighbor. Then you are not the father of the house. So Zimbabwe must be democratic, must be implementing any reforms according to the dictates of Zimbabwean people, not to make America happy.
Okay, so I think let's recap what we just said. The ambassador has done a good job. That's what he said. Since he came here, he was very visible, more than any ambassador that has come here to Zimbabwe. He has also done a lot of things. He's donated. He has spoken up when things were not going right in Zimbabwe. Basically, he has been the best ambassador that Zimbabwe has had ever since 1980. And we agree on that one. However, we disagree on sanctions, because you say America must not tell Zimbabwe what to do. Whereas the ambassador said Zimbabwe has got a written set of instructions of what to do, then the sanctions will be lifted. And the question that people are asking here is then, so what? What should happen? No one wants sanction in Zimbabwe, maybe except people like Tendai Biti. No one wants sanctions in Zimbabwe. Okay. The ambassador is saying only if you follow Zidera. And the ZANU-PF government is saying we cannot be told what to do. What would you suggest should happen?
What must happen is that America must respect Zimbabwean sovereignty. That Zimbabwe is the same as US. So we went to war to have that sovereignty rights. So people must not confuse here. It's not correct that the Zimbabwean government must implement conditions given by America. Then we become a colony of America. We become a US colony. how do we govern each other, our country, and how was democracy in Zimbabwe must be defined by Zimbabweans. It must not be defined by US. I would give example. US is talking of democracy, but the same US sponsored and planned the splitting of USSR, Russia, and urged the other states to be independent, thereby weakening Russia. But as we speak, US its states are still intact. If US is talking about democracy, they must liberate their states. We know that US is it's a group of different countries. Because a state is a country. Why is US not freeing, giving sovereign rights to its states? So it's a colonizer. All those states, they want freedom, but America will never let them be free. So under that condition, why is US telling other countries to? It has got a mistaken identity. Every country in the world is a US colony according to behavior. Now look what they are doing in Iran. The point I'm trying to put here is that the US is even talking about weapons of mass destructions, nuclear programs, but any country that has got nuclear, US, it's like China has got nuclear, Russia has got nuclear, they can't be bullied the same way that countries like Zimbabwe are being bullied. If Zimbabwe had nuclear right now, US was not going to bully us in this way. So it's either a country must develop nuclear and America would respect. If you don't have a nuclear, then you're taken as a Mickey Mouse.
Okay, I guess then that means we have a stalemate. Nothing is ever going to happen until either Mnangagwa moves his position or somehow there's a new administration in America that wants to follow what Mnangagwa wants. But I think the problem here is the person that needs to act is Mnangagwa. It's not the Americans. They are not feeling the pain. It's the Zimbabweans that are feeling the pain.
Okay, let me say this. Let me clear this misconception. Zimbabwe must not. Okay, I'm saying. Okay, let me say the ZANU-PF government is governing Zimbabwe right now. It's the ruling party, so they can't then listen to anyone in terms of how to govern Zimbabwe. If Zimbabweans gave ZANU-PF mandate to govern, ZANU-PF must govern. Zimbabwe is governed through the Constitution of Zimbabwe, through the Parliament of Zimbabwe, through the local authorities. In the governance of Zimbabwe, there's no way where there's a gap of US or Europe. There's no way. We don't have that gap. So if sanctions are going to be removed on the condition that the US must run Zimbabwe, then in that way, the sanctions must stay.
Okay. Clive Ndumo, if you read Zidera, you will find all the requirements that will make the sanctions go away. And they are well known. I think Mr. Jonassi knows all these requirements.
Okay, yeah, let me answer there. Zimbabweans must not actually read Zidera. We just read it out of interest. US mustn't even write Zidera because it's not democracy. No country, no state must write conditions to another state. That's where we are missing the whole point here. The government of Zimbabwe must not read Zidera because there's no country in this world for Zimbabwe to write any conditions to US. They need to fight a war with the US, defeat them, and then do that. A country can only write conditions to another country after one condition. You militarily defeat that country, and then it becomes your colony, and then you dictate to them. So the Zidera was not supposed to be written from the beginning, from the word go. So to then say the government of Zimbabwe must read Zidera and implement it, it's remember Zidera is put for MDC to be in power. If we are summarizing Zidera, Zidera is enabling, they call it a hungry man is an angry man. MDC, being led by Tsvangirai, was implementing, and with the total disaster, what was called by then a final push. And the final push was not happening. Right now, there was 31 July. I've been arrested 2 years ago. No tweet from U.S. Embassy, UK Embassy, any other Zimbabwean can be arrested politically or not. There will never be a tweet from U.S. Embassy and UK Embassy. But people from Alliance and their enablers like Wopo Chimono, they'll be quick to tweet. So this is Zidera. It's a weapon for ZANU-PF to be out of power through a mass uprising. And ZANU-PF now is saying US sanctions, you are enabling MDC to be in power. And this is a war. And then we'll make sure that MDC will never be in power. Because if they are in power, they are being enabled by a foreign country. And we all know that US, they don't sponsor anyone to be in power for the interest of the locals. US would always protect the US interest. So ZANU-PF is also saying we went to war for freedom of Zimbabwe. Now that America, you are sponsoring MDC, you and your MDC were going to defeat you. So ZANU-PF also must not be expected to be democratic under those conditions, because in any country, when a foreign power is sponsoring an opposition, it's even a treason. It's a treason right away, and it's also directly a declaration of war with the country. But US being a superpower, as we know, Zimbabwe might not match it militarily. Hence, we are not fighting US. Otherwise, the interference of US with the Zimbabwean political landscape Zimbabwe was supposed not to respond by implementing Zidera. Zimbabwe was supposed to respond by firing missiles to Washington. But US with its NATO, let's remember that NATO is the biggest military in the world, and it's a project of US. So Europe in militarily is run by US. So seriously, Zimbabwe can't be afford to fight the US plus its NATO allies. Now, that's why. So ZANU-PF is people are expecting ZANU-PF to be democratic, but they don't know that Zidera, if he implemented it's created to enable MDC to be in power. So ZANU-PF is also saying you are playing a referee while you are a biased referee. Then ZANU-PF is also reacting. Let's look at MDC. MDC Alliance is saying ZANU-PF must go. ED must go. What does that mean? To ZANU-PF, ZANU-PF must also say MDC must go. MDC is trying every trick. Anti-Zimbabwe sanctions. We know that this new Zidera 2018 was implemented when Chamisa and BT and I'm forgetting this prominent lawyer went to US. So if ZANU-PF is looking at this, do you think that they must just smile? ZANU-PF is also going to come uncompromising to MDC, because the MDC agenda is ZANU-PF must go. So if ZANU-PF might announce or not announce, but silently, if they don't announce, seriously, ZANU-PF must also implementing for MDC to go. They might be working on dismantling MDC. So we have got a cold war. We have got a silent war in Zimbabwe, which is between MDC and ZANU. And for people to expect ZANU-PF to play it fair when MDC is not playing it fair, I think that won't be effective conflict resolution. MDC must surrender and reject US support and then become 100% Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF would open their hands. to deal with MDC. Because if my wife has got a boyfriend, seriously, I can't then tell her all the secrets, all my movements. Because what if they might plan with the boyfriend to kill me? ZANU-PF is cornered. The alliance between MDC and the US is to corner, and the Europe is to corner ZANU-PF to dismantle the economy of Zimbabwe. So that is the issue would be ZANU-PF has failed to govern, and then ZANU-PF must go. ZANU-PF is aware of that. Remember, ZANU-PF is controlling the intelligence. They're the ruling party. They've got intelligence within the country, in Africa, internationally. So ZANU-PF is well equipped to understand who is dealing with the MDC and what. So to me, we are at full war in Zimbabwe. MDC has declared war with ZANU-PF, and they are being helped economically by US. And ZANU-PF must surely rise and fight back.
Okay, I think this is going to be a long discussion, because it's one side has taken a position and the other side has taken a position, and America just needs to wait, because what is happening in Zimbabwe now will eventually destroy ZANU-PF. There's no way ZANU-PF can continue like this. You saw what's happening with the COVID deaths. I do not think it will take another year or two before ZANU-PF is totally destroyed by lack of healthcare institutions. Basically, everything that is happening in Zimbabwe is pointing to ZANU-PF losing out at the end of the day. So, Mr. Jonassi, I think let us bring this to an end. Is there anything else you want to say before we close?
No, I'm happy when you say in less than 2 years ZANU-PF will be totally destroyed. Then it means the onus is also within ZANU-PF's hands to totally dismantle MDC before probably the end of this year. If then ED and the company, they don't dismantle the internal threat, which is MDC alliance, then if they are totally destroyed, then they are themselves to blame. Because at this moment, to me, ZANU-PF or the government of Zimbabwe must totally dismantle MDC alliance.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think you can all see, and everyone who's watching here can see. If you lose, in the past 6 months, you lose 6 cabinet ministers. It's not difficult to see where things could go wrong. One day you could wake up after losing 10 ministers. And I think the people who are going to suffer is not the United States.
Okay, but Mr. Gambagwe, let me correct this. The people who must be proudly Zimbabweans, let's not expect ZANU-PF to be angels. And then we don't look at all other players. We know on record that MDC will never talk about sanctions. If they mention the word sanctions, across to them, the word sanctions means corruption. The moment an MDC alliance person talks about sanctions, they talk about sanctions and say what is the problem in Zimbabwe is corruption, as if the municipalities run by MDC are not corrupt, as if MDC is not corrupt. So let's not, let's not paint someone black and then say you are black. If we want a good Zimbabwe, let's expect a change from ZANU. Let's expect a change from MDC alliance. MDC alliance to me is anti-Zimbabwe. If ZANU-PF are accused of corruption or whatever, those are issues that can be addressed internally. But MDC is anti-Zimbabwe. MDC is applying what is called scorched earth policy. MDC in their focus, in their activities, they are not protecting Zimbabwean brand. They're not protecting Zimbabwean national interests. They are not protecting anything. They want absolute power. And if Chamisa is not a president of Zimbabwe, anything else must go bad. If 6 ministers are dying in Zimbabwe, or 4 ministers are dying, it's a problem of ZANU-PF, it's a problem of MDC, it's a problem of Ideal Zimbabwe, everyone. The ministers in Zimbabwe are saving Zimbabweans. A minister ceases to be ZANU-PF. The moment you are a cabinet minister, you are not, it's a national duty. But in Zimbabwe, we systematically and deliberately treat a president, treat a minister as ZANU-PF people. So if we lose a minister, everyone has lost a minister. The transport he was working on, whether he introduced the Zupco or whatever, no one is using Zupco in Zimbabwe because you are carrying a ZANU-PF membership card. When you are inside Zupco, they don't ask for a party card. They don't ask for a T-shirt. So, but people are celebrating that from MDC Alliance, that the minister of transport died. Party, they, after celebrating, you still use the Zupco that the minister implemented. I think we are brainwashed. We don't love our country. It's a self-hate. MDC Alliance is pushing a narrative. They're not pushing any developmental agenda or anything. We even South Africa got billions in terms of COVID-19 bailout from the same World Bank. But Tendai Biti and company, they write a letter to say don't help Zimbabwe on COVID-19. This is an international pandemic. Of course, our ministers also somewhere, they were negligent to also host the parties where they take selfies without wearing masks, without social distancing. There are also some mistakes there and there, but you don't go outside to call a neighbor to kill your father. So as long as MDC, if I meet ED personally, I think that we might have that meeting will be heated. Me blaming him on why are you failing to dismantle MDC Alliance. If I can meet ZANU-PF, I think I'm even wishing and willing to address the Politburo of ZANU-PF. I want to address the Politburo of ZANU-PF and where we internally, it's a fire meeting. We need to deal with this MDC Alliance as soon as tonight.
Okay. Mr. Tinashe Jonassi, I know we started with a very narrow topic. The U.S. Ambassador, Brian Nichols, the job that he's been doing in Zimbabwe since 2018 when he first came, and also the fact that he's one of the best ambassadors that we have had from any country. In fact, if you look at all the other countries, he's one of the ambassadors that has come out. He has spoken very, very clearly on many issues. He has also assisted with donations across the country. And we know that it's very rare for a U.S. ambassador to spend more than 4 years, and he's almost there now. So very soon he might be leaving, and we might be getting a new ambassador. So, yeah, Mr. Jonassi, I think
but I want to challenge you. When you say the best ambassador, I think I don't agree. I only agreed on the charity side, on the USAID, but political interference. Why is he vocal? We should question why is Nicholson vocal. He is vocal because he is a spokesperson of MDC Alliance. He is vocal on matters of politics. He is not vocal on matters of cholera or whatever. So, which that must be cleared. He is vocal because he's a spokesperson for MDC Alliance.
Okay, but when people were killed on 1 August and the Mohlante Commission was set up, that's not political.
Okay, thank you.
When he speaks about that, it's not political, right?
Thank you. Let me show you why the issue of the killing is made to be ZANU-PF. It's a regime thing. I think you agree that people who died were 5 to 6 people who died.
Correct.
Thank you. Let me give an example. Here in South Africa, 40 people were killed. That you can multiply. That is more than times 7. Then let's go to Uganda. Just recently, more than 50 people were killed. And now I want you to compare. I want you to compare with 6 in Zimbabwe against 40 in South Africa, against 50 in Uganda. But there's nothing. It's business as usual. How many people died right now? Recently, about maybe, I think 2 weeks ago in the US, almost, if I'm not mistaken, almost 6 people died, including a police officer. And this is an equal number to Zimbabwe. And the world is quiet. And it's business as usual. So if we look at this, then we know that there's selective justice, there's selective democracy. The democracy we are talking about, if 6 people died in Zimbabwe, 6 people died in the US, and there's no Zidera for US, there's nothing. So Zimbabweans must then be worried if South Africa can kill 40 people, more than 50 people can be killed in Uganda, and there's nothing, no sanctions, no nothing. So Zimbabwe is not about issue of democracy. In Zimbabwe, it's an issue that we are not in the American side. The American, who is in the American side, is in this alliance. So the democracy and human rights, it's an excuse. Otherwise, there are so many countries which are killing. How many Palestinians are dying in the hands of the police and army of Israel? But Israel is a cousin and the best friend of America. It's a long. People are dying every day. Palestinians are dying like flies, and no one. Right now, we can talk about we hear a story of in China where one of their richest sons, Jack Ma, is apparently disappeared, and no one knows. And the US is quiet. We saw the journalist Khashoggi, whatever, the prominent Saudi Arabia journalist who was also a writer for, I think, Washington Post, if not the New York Times. He was brutally killed at the Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey. And the whole world was crazy, everything. What happened with America? America is quiet. Why? Because their friends, they are exploiting the oil in Saudi Arabia. And they're even exporting and selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. So let's we understand, even during lockdown, so many people died in South Africa, more than Zimbabwe or any other African country, at the hands of police and the army during lockdown, first lockdown last year, and the world was quiet. So the issue of human rights and democracy, I'm saying democracy must be defined by Zimbabweans. If our democracy is to put a president who is a Sangoma, if our democracy is to run the country through prophets and anointing oils, if Zimbabweans are happy with that, that's our democracy. Let's not define Zimbabwe through MDC Alliance. MDC Alliance is a section of the total Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is not defined by Chamisa. Zimbabwe is not defined by Tendai. But apparently they've got a well-oiled machinery that is sponsoring their narrative. The MDC Alliance narrative is louder globally because even here in South Africa, I've heard a lot of interviews that have been stopped because they question you about what is your line of argument. The moment they see that your interpretation and analysis is independent, they will give you an excuse to take you off air. So MDC Alliance is well funded. Their narrative is all over the world, so that everyone says. But we have got an opposition leader in Uganda who is under military house arrest. Chamisa is free in Zimbabwe, driving all over. After the last 2018 elections, Chamisa was never arrested. He was never tortured. But look at the screaming. But Bobby Wine is in America. He is in US. He's in Kampala. They under house arrest. Last time he was tortured, he went to seek treatment in US. But They are quiet. So Zimbabwe will never be defined by US. That's why I'm saying when this lockdown level 4 is done in Zimbabwe, I am going to Zimbabwe. I want to meet ED. I want to meet to address the Politburo. And then if we are going to fight, we are going to fight. Because these comrades, if they come to war, they are tried and tested. They must prove it now. MDC alliance must be dismantled.
Okay, I just want to end this discussion, but after you give us your goodbye, I want to replay what the ambassador said. I think it's very important to Zimbabweans to understand how these sanctions can be removed.
No. Mr. Gambangwe, let me correct one thing here. People can listen what the ambassador is saying, it's fine. But we are not going to be run by US. No matter, let's say on Zidera there are 20 conditions. No matter they can remove 19 and leave 1. Zimbabwe is not going to implement what Americans are saying. Zimbabwe must implement what Zimbabweans are saying, what we want to be done. We are not a colony of UK or Europe or US. I want you to understand that. We should listen to what the ambassador is saying. When our ambassador in America, if he can also give conditions to the Washington administration that they are going to implement. Because the US can't give us conditions, and then in return, we can also give them conditions. Then that means we are not working on an equal terms. The ambassador can give us 100 conditions or half or quarter. We are not going to run Zimbabwe according to their democracy Bible.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make here is, at some point, there needs to come to a table to talk.
Okay.
And the ambassador is saying you need to come to a table to talk. Okay. But you can't fail to do simple things like implementing the Motlanthe Commission. You can't say, I will never listen to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gambangwe. The Motlanthe Commission is because 6 people died. I am also giving you an example that is just around 2 weeks ago. 6 people died in America when they were being attacked in parliament, in a senator. Where is the commission in the US?
No, but their systems were able to deal with the situation. The person who won the elections was able to take over. In Zimbabwe, when Morgan Tsvangirai won, he failed to take over.
Okay, Mr. Gambangwe, is Donald Trump arrested?
Well, why should he be arrested? I'm talking here about the political system where someone who said they won the election, they were refusing to step down. They could not force the system, even if they're president. The system was able to push them out. In Zimbabwe, if Mnangagwa says, I'm not coming out, he's not coming out.
Okay, thank you. Then, if their system was able to deal with it, that means when 6 people died, their system contained and stopped further death. Why are we not saying also when 6 people died in Zimbabwe, our system controlled, took charge of the situation, there was never further death? Why are we not saying that? Because if soldiers in Zimbabwe, soldiers were holding guns, shooting to unarmed people, surely they could even kill even 1 million. If then the death ended at 6, where is the difference here? If 6 people died in Zimbabwe, 6 people died in America, where is the difference?
Mnangagwa set up a commission, the Motlanthe Commission. The report was made public. The recommendations are there. Identify the people who killed, compensate the victims. That's all. Why hasn't that been done?
Thank you, Mr. Gambangwe. I'm happy. Let's take the original meanings of words, of English words here. A commission was set up by, let's say, by the government of Zimbabwe. A commission, and the commission then had recommendations. The word recommendation is not it's not a constitutional obligation. When you are recommending, it's more like you are advising. recommendations. It's the government of Zimbabwe to pick what to implement and what not to implement. These are recommendations. They are not constitutional obligation. They are not a constitutional act. Then if we understand what is a recommendation, then I think we'll be home and dry.
Okay, but it just goes against the values of many people that you kill someone, you agree that you killed them, you set up a commission and find out that you killed that person, and then you refuse to compensate them. You refuse to take responsibility.
Okay, Mr. Gambakwe, are we having any proof or fact that the 40 people killed in South Africa were compensated?
Well, I'm particularly talking about Zimbabwe. If we're to talk about South Africa, obviously, there are problems with that.
Okay, remember, if we talk about Zimbabwe, then let's not talk about US. If we say, if you narrow our discussion to Zimbabwe, why is US a main actor, a main word in our discussion of Zimbabwe? Because if I mention South Africa, you say let's leave South Africa, let's talk about Zimbabwe. So can we leave US and talk about Zimbabwe?
Okay, I guess you've got a point, but there's no South Africa Democracy Act. There's a Zimbabwe Democracy Act.
Okay, Mr. Gambagwe, I like you now. The act in Zimbabwe must be, my understanding, they must be done in Parliament of Zimbabwe. Do you agree that our acts must be done by the Parliament of Zimbabwe?
Correct.
So what act are we talking about, and what are we talking about implementing it if the act was done by the Senate of US?
Okay, so why are the ZANU-PF people saying let's lift the sanctions?
Okay, all right, okay. They are saying sanctions must be lifted because sanctions were not supposed to be there at all. What is a sanction? A sanction is an economic embargo. No matter you can want to look at it in whatever direction, but sanctions are economic embargo. Sanctions are an economic war, economic weapon. That's the definition of sanctions. You can't then put an economic embargo and say we are doing this to help your economy grow. We are helping your democracy. Democracy is not defined by economy. A country can a democracy is the implementation and enforcement and the upholding of your constitution. There's no other definition of democracy in any country except the upholding of your constitution. So now, you don't then put economic sanctions and say we are helping you to be democratic, because democracy is not defined by the US Constitution. The democracy of Zimbabwe, the way the Americans interpret their democracy, the way a US Constitution is tailor-made, it's different from the way the Constitution of Zimbabwe. So that means when we implement governance and democracy in Zimbabwe, we use a syllabus, we use a Bible called Constitution of Zimbabwe. So the moment then acts are created in American Senate or Parliament, and then they are handed over to the Zimbabwean Parliament for implementation, that is tantamount to colonization. So when we talk about Zimbabwe, let's talk about the Zimbabweans, ED, Nelson Chamisa, Tinashe Jonas, Professor Love Momaduku. Let's talk about Zimbabwe and what are they doing in their constitution, which was even MDC, Mr. Monzora was involved in COPAC. So now, why are we ignoring the product of Zimbabweans and then wanting an act from the Congress of America? That is, to me, un-Zimbabwean, and that is the lack of patriotism. Let's define, acts must be made in the Parliament of Zimbabwe. But if some acts can come from Australia, some can come from UK, and the Parliament of Zimbabwe has got a department to make their own acts, that means that we should divide our parliament into a local committee parliament and the international parliament. that receives some eggs from other countries. That's
okay,
not our
Mr. Tinashe Jonas.
our constitution doesn't have that provision. There's nothing. If you can download the Constitution of Zimbabwe tonight or tomorrow, please, tomorrow then call me when you find a clause that allows the implementation of acts and laws from other countries.
Right, Mr. Tinashe Jonas, President of Ideal Zimbabwe, I really enjoy talking to you. And I know this is a very difficult topic, especially for me. I don't like the sanctions, but I also don't like the human rights abuses. I don't like the economic mismanagement. So I'm somehow in between. I want a solution. And I tend to agree with what the ambassador is saying, that people need to come to the table. But everyone must bring something. You can't just come to the table with nothing.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Gabagwe, let me help you to talk about Zimbabwe. When I was talking about South Africa, you brought me back to Zimbabwe, but now you are back to America again. Okay, let me say this. Zimbabwe doesn't need a dialogue with the US. If in that dialogue, remember, this American ambassador is pushing a MDC alliance narrative of dialogue. This dialogue is to dismantle power from the government of Zimbabwe to transfer to MDC alliance, namely Chamisa. Zimbabwe is not run through dialogues. Zimbabwe is not run through round tables. Because ED can go tomorrow and meet Brian Nichols in any hotel or at the embassy or US embassy. But I want you to understand that that meeting is not constitutional. That is called interaction or engagement. It's not the resolution of that meeting are not constitutional, because Brian Nichols is not part of the government of Zimbabwe. He is not there to make laws and rules of the country. So ED can meet Chamisa tomorrow. ED can meet Brian, but whether it's a government or it's ZANU-PF, whatever the structure, but that meeting is not constitutional. It's just interaction.
Okay. Right, Mr. Jonas, I think let us bring this to an end, and I really enjoy talking to you. I'll talk to you again on Monday next week. We have a discussion every Monday, and I know a lot of people look forward to it. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, sir.
Thank you so much.
And I've only asked in Zimbabwe that the events of August 2018 be investigated, and that the results of that investigation be implemented. What I recently said, again, was that the Motlanthe Commission recommendations have not been implemented. The events of January 2019, those events have not been investigated properly. No one's been brought to book as a result of the state-generated violence at that time. I met with some of the victims of violence here from January 2019, and those people are still waiting for justice. But that's an issue of institutions and the rule of law. What I will say is that in my conversations with members of Congress and their staffs from both parties, there has been a remarkable unity of views about Zimbabwe. And they again rest on the issues of respect for democracy and its institutions, the rule of law, and human rights, as well as market-based economic policies. And I believe that one of the unique features of the relationship that we have with Zimbabwe is that there is a U.S. legal framework, a law that lays out what it is the United States would like to see happen in Zimbabwe. And that doesn't exist for most countries. And that's an opportunity both for the government of Zimbabwe and the government of the United States to sit down and say, here are a list of things that we're concerned about. If you move in the positive direction from our standpoint on these issues, our relationship will improve. We've told you in black and white what we care about, and we look forward to seeing progress on those issues and to working with you to see progress on those issues.
Right. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been a very long discussion, and I hope that we'll be able to continue next week to talk about other issues with Mr. Jonassi. And tomorrow I'll be back. We'll be talking local politics, what is happening in the MDCT, what is Chamisa up to. So I'll give you an update on that tomorrow. Thank you very much and good night.